You are tuned in to the Leading Edge Conversations podcast. We're about to dive deep, so strap yourself in and get ready to explore the leading edge of consciousness. Hello and welcome to this episode of Leading Edge Conversations. I'm your host, Luke Scott III, and this is the show that brings you people that are living on the leading edge of consciousness, so we can talk about things that have never been spoken about before. This combination of words, this combination of energies has never been witnessed before, and so we are super excited to bring this to you. And today I have a very special guest, an incredible friend of mine, soul brother, the amazing Elliott Timothy Harlin-Bethell. And Elliott is a mind, body, soul, spirit coach. He is into all sorts of weird and wonderful things. He can go for 14 days with no food, no water. Like, this guy's insane. And his mission is to become, by the end of this year, do 3 months breatharian, which is no food and no water for 3 entire months. Now, I know that might sound crazy, but let's get into it and see how this is possible, because Elliott is actually doing this. So Elliott, welcome to the show. It's absolutely
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. Elliott, we've had some interesting adventures together, and I'm sure we're going to talk about those.
Yeah, 100%.
And
so first of all, say hello to everyone else as well. I'll introduce myself. I've known Luke for about a year. 3 or 4 years ago, I had a little bit of a breakdown, and I started to work my way through anything in my life that I felt was holding me back. So I wrote down a list of my fears, and at the top of that list was public speaking, which is how I come into contact with Luke through various synchronicities that led me to him. I was on a book writing course for Hay House, the book company, and I bumped into Luke's fiancée, now wife, Mia. And that was a sign for me to then get in contact with Luke and put into place some action towards public speaking. And it was funny because I knew a guy called Andy Harrington when I was younger, and I was kind of swayed towards going towards him at one point, but then meeting Mia on this course was kind of the universe's little trail of breadcrumbs or bridge of incidents or synchronicity for me to follow. And ultimately it worked out very well for me. So we'll probably be talking about a lot of synchronicities and signs and spiritual algorithms that I use and have found very useful over the years once I started this awakening process and honed myself into the various different spiritual methods that I utilize today, from fasting to meditation, amongst many other things. So we'll talk about some of those.
Sounds wonderful. When I was first introduced to Elliott, everyone told me he was like a sexy Jesus. And I can confirm that he is a sexy Jesus. and as well as that, he is now stepping up big time since we met. He's got this YouTube channel, Mind, Body, Soul, Spirit Coach, and he's posting some incredible videos that are just really challenging what most people's normal belief systems are, and challenging the belief systems that we're brought up with. And one of the things I know you're doing at the moment, Elliott, which is really cool, is you've taken over 100 people, I believe, through a 7-day hard, dry fast where they have no food and no water or contact with water for 7 whole days, right?
So it wasn't a 7-day hard, dry fast, but what I did was I opened up for anyone who wanted to experience a various form of fasting for 7 days. And in 2 months, it was 150. And in 28 days, there was 100 at one point. And we went through various forms of fasting, from juice fasting to water fasting to dry fasting to hard dry fasting. And even some of the people went through a fast, which was the first time I'd experienced this, because up until this point, I'd actually gone pretty much just liquids for this year. The plan was to go the whole year without food. But then I got this calling to try this form of fasting that I hadn't tried, by a lady I talked to called Fasting with Alice. And what she does is she eats food, but just raw veg and fruit. but she will consume no liquids. So it's kind of the flip reverse from what I've been doing. I'm always up for challenging myself and seeing how different things work, because ultimately by trying new things is evolution. When we get stuck in doing the same thing, they say we operate from our subconscious 90 to 95% of the time. That's technically when we fall asleep, because we're just running on old programs. Like, I remember driving to work once and thinking, how the fuck did I get to work today? I can't even remember driving to work, but it was just autopilot. So I was getting there and that's falling asleep. And ultimately, by stepping back into conscious creation and start learning new things, or I always get people that I'm working with at the beginning to start brushing their teeth with their left hand, to writing with their left hand, to juggling, because this ultimately increases the corpus callosum that divides the two brain hemispheres and gets us back into the present moment easier. When we're in the present moment, we can start taking out old beliefs or old paradigms or programs and reprogramming the new, healthier, prosperous and joyful programs, instead of running on some of the old ones, which maybe when we was at school, we get taught history, which I believe is his story and not our story. We can now step into those old beliefs, programs, paradigms, and start to fuck them off like furniture in a house. Like, you've served your purpose. Thank you, food. I like the fact I've really enjoyed you. Don't necessarily need you. I might come back to you in the future, but for now, I'm just going to fuck you off, and I'm going to implant a new belief system that I can get energy from the sun and from the earth, so that I can play around with that for a little bit and then do it with water. And I've done this with sex. I've done it with drugs. I've done it with friendships, because I believe that this body is a temple, and this temple is built out of bricks of belief systems. When we create a belief, that then becomes our personality. Hi, I'm Elliott. This is my personality. That personality then projects out our personal reality. So our habits create beliefs, and then our beliefs are very powerful. Our beliefs become bricks, and our beliefs become our personalities, and our personalities become our personal realities. So that might need to be played back a little bit slow. But I found that my reality when I was addicted to drugs was because ultimately I had placed my attention on something that created a very powerful emotion. Now, when you place your focus, that's your energy. And when you focus it on something which has a powerful emotion, then it gets attached, and that creates a building block of a belief. So ultimately, I wasn't addicted to drugs. What I was addicted to was the thought of drugs, because the second I thought about it, it recreated that chemical in my body instantly, because I'd done it, which then brought forth it, because it was a very powerful energy. The thought and the energy or the emotion combined was like, boom, I could be out in the middle of the fucking ocean. And if I did it, I could find someone on a boat with drugs, because that's how powerful my emotion was with it. My sister said to me, you are the most resourceful person I've ever met in my life. And I've thanked addiction, and I've made my peace with it, and I've transcended it. And I now believe that addiction is the most powerful thing I ever had, because ultimately addiction taught me that when I combine my focus and energy on something, it's a superpower, and that comes into my reality, boom, very quickly, when I now focus that attention with enough focus into one place. And I sometimes in my talks use the expression of, if you've got a magnifying glass and you've got a piece of paper and you want to set fire to it with the sun, and you're constantly doing that with it, the focus of the sun is just going to be wishy-washy, and it's not going to set fire to anything. But if I hold that focus in one place very, very, very tight, that piece of paper is going to set fire. Ultimately, if my body is a bucket and I have holes in it and I'm filling it with water, that water is going to piss out everywhere. That's what we're doing with our energy, because if our energy is being utilized by our five senses, touch, taste, sound, smell, and sight, and constantly being drawn to radio, TV, girls, sex, watches, cars, or whatever is fighting for our attention, fighting for our energy, then we haven't got enough energy in the bucket to focus it on what we want to create, which draws forth from the non-physical into the physical, or the unseen into the seen. But then when you take your energy and attention away from these five senses, for instance, in the Bible, there's a saying somewhere that says, there's 5 trees in heaven and they don't change throughout the seasons. And when you learn what these 5 trees are, then ultimately you realize who you are and what you are. And from my perception of this, and I read lots of these scriptures and Bibles and old teachings, from the Emerald Tablets to the Tablet of Kish to all different ones. And I see that there's a lot of metaphors and parables that teach us how to cleanse this physical vessel in order to then project pure things outwards. There's a particular quote that says, when you clean the inside of the cup, the outside of the cup becomes clean. As above, so below, as within, so without. So when we purify the body and we only speak our truth, And I took a vow or a decree of truth about 3 years ago, so that if, say, I was dating a girl and she said, does my bum look big in this? And her bum look big, I'd have to say, yeah, honey, your bum looks massive in that today, but it's not big. You just need to change the outfit. It's the outfit, not you. If that was the case, if that was a lie, then bang, I'd have to hit her with the truth, because ultimately when you speak your truth, that person at some fundamental level has a higher self. And if I'm lying to that person, I got very good at lying. I could lie to that person and they would believe me, but their higher self is like, nah, there's a disconnection here, and there'd be a vibrational mismatch. And that person at a fundamental level does pick up on that. When you start to speak your truth, I found that when I now step on stage or when I talk in one of my videos, it's like, boom, everybody's listening, because not only do they believe it, but there's a higher part of them that zooms in and it's like, this guy's talking the truth and he's showing us a different perspective. And ultimately, when you see things from a different perspective, if you're looking at things from a 2D perspective, this is all you're seeing. If you're looking at things from a 3D perspective, you have a much better view. And then if you're looking from a 4D perspective up to 12D perspective, then you're looking at things from so much of a higher angle, you get to see more of the picture and therefore make a more educated decision on what you're doing.
Elliott, you just dropped some absolute truth bombs there. That was wonderful. I was like, I just wanted you to keep going. That was
I can keep going. How long have you got?
So, as you can tell, everyone who's tuning in and listening in, Elliott is a super well-educated, deep researcher. He learns from a wide variety of places as well. And every time we get together, we have something new to talk about, and we're sharing new, exciting things. And this is really what Leading Edge Conversations is about. I love catching up with Elliott and finding out what he's been up to. And one of the beautiful things about you, brother, is this idea that anything is possible. I just feel when I'm with you, like there's no rules, there's no limits. Like what any kind of limitations people put, it's just out of the window.
Right, you might want to edit this into this video, but write impossible here and then write I'm possible down the bottom. It's the same word. Yeah. Right? So anything's possible if I'm possible.
Yeah, absolutely. You carry this amazing energy of just expansion, and I love it. And I know we've talked about that a lot. How can people tap into this? Because this is something you've done. You've kind of taken yourself out of normal society. You've figured out who you really are, and now you're bringing that and sharing that with the world. What's your advice for anyone who is maybe not feeling so limitless right now?
Right, you're in a perfect opportunity right now. This whole coronavirus thing is, in my opinion, it is a war on consciousness. So corona actually means crown, or the aura of plasma that surrounds the sun. Now, your body has an aura. You are made of pure light vibrating at a level of frequency, and you have an energy centers, and the top energy center is called a crown. So this is for a perspective for you to look at, that this is a very powerful moment that's been brought forward for you to realize who and what you really are. Now, when you spend time, your aura can be, and I'm not even going to talk about the size of auras, because my belief is they can be a lot bigger than what the current estimation is. But your aura is a projected energy field. You have 114 chakras and 72,000 nadis. But for today, we're going to talk about the 7 main ones that create the energy wheel in the body, which is the root chakra, the sacral chakra, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown chakra, or the corona chakra. Now, when you go into a meditation, you can draw light into this crown chakra, and then the way I manifest is to then create the emotion within my heart center, and then to draw it down into my root center and to earth it and to ground it into the earth. Now, going off subject a little bit, Nikola Tesla said if you can find the meanings behind 3, 6, and 9, then you have the keys to the universe. Thoth in the Emerald Tablets talks of the masters or dimensions 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, that is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 7. Now, he's talking about the masters of the universe or the dimensions as the 7 main chakras. Now, if you was to do that and label the root chakra 3, that would mean the heart chakra is 6 and the crown chakra is 9. Now, we draw in our creative energy through the crown chakra, and that's the most important one. When it gets to the heart center, you have to create the emotion with the heart center, because that's where our energy is ultimately transcended out. Once you created that emotion, you then bring that thought form into the root chakra, which brings it from the non-physical, draws it in, creates the emotion, and then you earth it into the root chakra, and that is using 3, 6, and 9 to manifest and draw non-physical into the physical and root it and bring it forth into the 3D from the higher dimensions. This is what I've been shown when I've meditated on Nikola Tesla, when I've meditated on Thoth. But ultimately, what we think and feel, if we are constantly thinking thoughts of prosperity, health, joyfulness, this is projected into our aura. Now, when it's projected into our aura, ultimately this works like a magnet, because we put it into that, and then that comes forth and comes to us, as within, so without. So by thinking these thoughts, ultimately what's going to come towards me are people that are healthy, prosperous, and joyful. And I noticed this, and I've been shown this in that my lessons have been very, very extreme polarities. So I've gone from very, very extreme drug addiction, smoking crack, smoking heroin, smoking weed, smoking, taking ketamine, taking mushrooms, taking all sorts of things. And ultimately, I thank these things now. I don't think they're not a negative or a positive for me. They're very much just there. And what I attach to them is ultimately I can use them. I could still use them now, and I still do frequently use some of these things, but I set intention into them, so that when I set intention into it, I draw forth those energies from that. It just opens me up, and then I experience more of the intention that I put into it. It's like when you eat food. Food has cellular memory. So the reason we say grace before we eat food is to set the intention of gratitude into it. Now, if you look at vibrational frequencies and energies and a scale, gratitude is in the top 3, really. It's up there with unconditional love and light. So by having gratitude and saying grace into your food, what you're doing technically is raising the vibration of that food. Now, this might be hard for some people to believe, and I believe it will trigger a few people, but I transcended proteins, fats, carbs, and calories a long time ago. I've done a fast of 20 days with no food, just water, and I set with the intention to only lose no weight at all, and I lost 3 pounds in 20 days. I then later on done a fast of 5 days and said I was going to lose 14 pounds, 1 stone, and I lost 11 pounds. There was no difference in the water that I drank. There was just difference in the time period and the intentions and the energy exchanges I'd done with breathwork, grounding, sunlight, and affirmations or intentions or invocations before sleeping to ultimately feed my subconscious that my cells were going to raise in frequency and energy vibration, and to re-nourish, rejuvenate, and refresh. And this is an ancient shamanic practice that I learned probably about 3 years ago, where you invoke and encourage and say hello to all the cells. So I would be like, hello, heart, how are you? I love you. Please raise your vibration, rejuvenate, renourish, refresh, raise to your highest vibrational frequency. And using this, I've gone 40 days without food and gone to bed feeling hungry one night and woken up in the morning like my body has eaten a roast dinner or something. I don't eat food. I don't eat meat, sorry. I gave up eating meat 3 years ago. And the reason I gave up eating meat was because I became very aware of that every food has cellular memory. And at the time I was very depressed, addicted to drugs, anxious, and fearful. And I started to look at the foods I was eating and the correlations to how my body was reacting and my mind was reacting, and how my soul didn't really like what I was eating. So when I was eating meat, I started to see that this ultimately is a fear-based vibration, because these animals are kept in a very fear, depressed, anxious environment. So that means their vibration is very, very much that. Now, if I was a DVD player and I put a horror film into my DVD player, it's going to be a fucking horror film that shows on the DVD. If I put in a love DVD, it's going to be a love film that comes up. If I'm putting fear and anxiety vibration into my vibrational frequency and energy field, why do I think I'm going to get a love story coming out when I'm putting fear, anxiety, and depression into it? So I completely cut out the meat and I went pescatarian. And I decided to do it this way because I wanted to see gradually how my energy changed. And I very much listened to a yogi or guru called Sadhguru. And he was saying that if we are to eat something like this, we should eat things that are furthest away from us in the evolutionary line. So if we was to eat a monkey, it'd be the worst thing we could eat because it's closest to us in evolution. So that would really cause some mental problems. But then when you step further away from it and you get to fish, it's not quite as bad. But ultimately, I then gave up fish. And I was still eating dairy and eggs. And then I cut out dairy and eggs. And that was a big shift for me. Dairy was one of the ones that was really holding me back and created a lot of addiction around halloumi. But when I gave up cheese, what I channeled and what I was shown was that dairy creates mucus within the body, and mucus creates inflammation. Now, once we have inflammation within the body, it is an energy blockage. So it's a dam. So as soon as we have that dam, what happens is all illness, I transcended illness a while back as well. So illness is a man-made thought. So if I go to the doctors with my mum and I say I've got a lump on somewhere on my body, I won't say where, the doctor will look at it and he says we've got to run some tests for cancer. Now what happens is if I've got an energy blockage or a dam, that doctor's now projecting an energy of cancer onto me. My mum is now projecting an energy of cancer onto me. And in my head, I'm thinking, I would be thinking I've got cancer within me. And there's an energy blockage within me, which now starts to manifest and build up that energy. Now, when we step away from that doctor's, my mum now goes and tells her friends. I go and tell my work colleagues, I tell my friends. And what happens is all of these people's energies start projecting that thought form onto me. And it gradually starts to build up and build up and build up within that dam. Now, our auras and our energy fields are affected by other people's energies and aura fields. So your boss has a different version of you in his head to your work colleagues. That's why when you're around your boss, you'll be like, oh, hi, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Then when you go back to your work colleagues, you'll be like, all right, babe, how's it going? Now, this is because when you're in certain energy fields, they affect you. If you don't know how to set up boundaries within your own energy, now, when you set up boundaries within your energy, nobody's energy can affect you, but you have to become aware of your energy field and how to utilize it. And because of TV, radio, and everything taking our attention, our energy all the time, it's been very difficult for people to utilize and find out who and what they are. Now, this coronavirus has made everybody go inside and sit within their own energy fields. So now you're not walking around and walking past 100,000 people a day. Now, your energy field is very pure. So people are sitting down, and if they're taking the time to sit in themselves and not watch TV and to close their eyes and go within themselves, their energy fields now are very pure. And when you find that your energy field is very pure, you're like, oh, I see now. And I took this to very much extreme. So I stopped eating, which then I took on less cellular memory from food. So now my thought forms were becoming very apparent. So when I think something, it would come into my reality very quickly. You then saw that I went and done a 7-day vow of silence. So I didn't speak for 7 days. I still continued with my life. I still took a pad out and went to the gym at the time. And what this does, in effect, is completely changes your vibration. If you was to think of your body as an instrument, like a piano, if you don't tune that piano in for ages, you're going to play it and cats are going to be squealing, dogs are going to be running away, and the piano's just going to play shit music. But when you ultimately tune that piano in, it creates beautiful music. It's the same with a magnet, which is in effect what this instrument is. Every night when you go to bed, Abraham talks about in the morning when you wake up, you're practically resurrected every morning, because what happens is your point of attraction from the night before goes into stillness. So for 8 hours where you're asleep, your point of attraction stops. This is why before you go to bed, 20 minutes before you go to bed, it's a very important time to set affirmations and intentions, because this then your conscious mind goes to sleep, your subconscious takes over and puts into place a chain of events or a chain of causes that will then create effects for you to follow the next day. So this is the bridge of incidents or the synchronicities. If people are just stepping into synchronicities, just understand that coincidences don't exist. If you place an intention the 20 minutes before you go to sleep, your subconscious creates a chain or a breadcrumb of causes. When you follow these causes, you create effects, and then the effects come into your reality. It's very, very beautiful. There's a guy on Instagram at the moment and YouTube called Official Jose Joseph Rodriguez, and he talks a lot about the teachings of Neville Goddard and Think Rich and Grow Rich and these other people, which was a synchronicity for me very much, because these are all people I started studying 4 years ago. So then to find his studies, he does little mind maps with them and he explains them in shortened versions. So it's been very good. I went a long way around it, and he's very much condensed it for people, which is very, very good, because you can then download the mind maps. You can listen to his 45-minute versions of whole books. And it's always advisable to read the whole book, because ultimately what you will see will be different from what he saw. When 300 people go to the cinema to watch a film, although there's only one film being shown, there's 300 versions of that film being seen, because everybody sees it from their level of vibration or what dimension they're in at that particular time. And for me, this is shown very much in Dante's Divine Comedy. I think I've got a copy of it just up here. He starts off in hell and then works his way through to earth and then goes to heaven. And what became very apparent to me through the use of drugs is that you can change your vibrational frequency and go on to different dimensions and different timelines very, very quickly. And ultimately, you don't even need to use drugs. They were just taught to learn this. Ultimately, I can change my vibration by placing my attention and changing my emotions and then jumping through different timelines. We're multidimensional beings. And whereas my mindset years ago used to be, oh, that person's got the nice house, the nice car, and the girlfriend, that means there's less for me to have. What I'm now very aware of is that now I have all the nice things, but I have 8 slices of cake in front of me, and I have my 8 slices of cake. But anyone looking at me thinking, I've got 8 slices of cake, they can't have any cake. They've got 8 slices sitting in front of them. They need to access them. I'm not taking anything from their 8 slices, but by them focusing their attention on my 8 slices, they're not using their energy to create their own 8 slices. So what I try to teach people is that once you start taking your energy back from outside, bringing it within, you ultimately fill that bucket up and heal all those energy leakages. Once your bucket is full, the word beautiful can be condensed into be you till full. And when you're yourself till full, then you then take that attention and focus. You use it in the non-physical through meditation and visualization. This is when Neo steps into the white room and draws up guns, draws up cars, draws up helicopters. So when you step into your meditation and visualize this white room, you then bring the house that you want into that visualization. And I will take people through, I've done this quite a lot with mentees in the last couple of weeks, is I will say, we're now stepping to the front door of the house that you want to buy, and I'll get them to go on Rightmove and look at this house, the front door, the living room, the toilets, and I'll take them for a guided meditation of this house. And I'll say, we're walking into the bathroom now. I want you to walk over to the tap. I want you to turn the tap on. I want you to turn it onto a warm tap. I want you to place your right hand under that warm tap. And in this meditation visualization, I want you to feel that warmth on your right hand so intensely that you're almost now bringing the non-physical into the physical, because you've gone into the non-physical and you've attached an emotion to it. You've attached a sense to it. And you've started to experience that sense in this 3D realm from the non-physical. Now that starts to piece together and draw the non-physical into the physical, and gradually you start to see the unseen in the seen. You'll get more synchronicities that show you, boom, this is coming to fruition, this is coming to fruition, this is coming to fruition. And initially I will say to people, start off with something small, because our belief systems have been built up over the years through media that if you want something very big, it's more difficult to get them small. This is absolute bollocks, because something that's massive is just as easy to manifest as it is small. But we need to go down and get rid of belief systems that you've built up over the years. Like, we need to eat 3 times a day. You've been with me for 7 days and you know that's absolute bullshit. That you're going to die if you don't drink water for 3 days. That's absolute bullshit. It's all fear-based control systems, and all of these fear-based control systems are just melting away. And even the word fear just makes me laugh now, because I've come up with so many different acronyms for what fear can be, like face everything and river. There's hundreds of different ones. You've only got to watch Ian Brown's music video called Fear, and he comes up with probably about 25 different versions of what fear means to him. So just change your perspective on something, and ultimately you're in a completely different reality.
Elliott, it's been really wonderful to see how far you've come since I met you the first time. Like, just hearing you speak, it really fills my heart with just so much love and appreciation. It wasn't that long ago, we were in a cabin together for 7 days. doing
about 2 years nearly now.
Yeah, doing a 7-day hard dry fast. And so this was an experiment. I'd never done this before. So I managed to last 4.5 days with no food and no water. And then I decided I wanted to take some water. And it was pushing me past my limits. I had a lot of fear come up, as you know, right? You really held me in the space because you'd been there before. I was afraid because I'd been programmed that if you don't drink for 3 days, you'll die. I think it was if you don't eat for a week or if you don't drink for 3 days. And that was a belief firmly held because a teacher had told me at school. And absolutely now, after doing research, we know people can go 40 days, right? And even longer. And so it's just really incredible what can happen when you open yourself and begin to create from that white room. I love the idea of that white room. I actually do a similar meditation where I go to the white room, and in the white room, it's a room of creation. There's a movie called Harry Potter. I don't know if you've seen Harry Potter, but it's one of my favorite books when I was younger. And he has a similar room. He has a room where he can create anything. You know, you just go into this room, whatever you want is there. And this is in a children's book, right? So it's accessible to everybody, but most people don't look past the first layer. Like you said about the movie, some people will watch Harry Potter, they'll see this room and they'll go, oh, that's cool. Other people will go, oh, wow, I wonder if that really exists. And then other people will go, okay, great, I'm going there. Let's go.
Some people will go, I already go there.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. Elliott, I'd love for us to go a little bit deep, because this has been a big part of our journey as well, is going from being these perceived tough guys who maybe don't talk about their emotions so much and, drugs and that kind of scene, to now being both conscious leaders who help people to get in touch with their emotions. And I saw a video of you not long ago where you were openly crying on camera. And I just think that's really beautiful. I did a video yesterday where I got really vulnerable about something that came up for me. I had a big trigger that came up. And I just went on camera just to share, like, even after doing this for so long, I started my personal development journey when I was 18, so 14 years ago. There's still triggers, right? There's still things that come up. And I'd love just to know what that's been like for you, your journey with getting in touch with your emotions.
So it's been very interesting for me. So I've always known that I had a very, very strong feminine side. And through looking into human design and my astrology and my numerology, it then became very apparent that I was slightly more feminine in a masculine body. But ultimately, my mum taught me how to access the dark feminine side of myself. So shamans will talk that we have a dark feminine, a dark masculine, and a light feminine and a light masculine. And these 4 aspects, we need to master all of them, because ultimately they're parts of us. And I mastered my dark feminine and dark masculine very quickly, because they were the fun ones to me, right? Like learning how to master your dark masculine. And then I was very insecure as a child. I was very overweight. I had long hair. I used to get called a girl, which was very hurtful at the time, because my sister had cancer and she'd lost her hair and she was always called a boy. So we'd always laugh about it and giggle between the two of us that she was the boy and I was the girl. And then once I decided to get into shape, I had this really big fear of being arrogant, but I had learned how to, in a way, manipulate to get things that I wanted. And I got to the point where I think I manipulated it so much, I started to get addictions and I started to go into that darkness very much. And that's when I had a breakdown and had to step out of it and really start focusing on my lighter sides. When I started focusing on them and ultimately bringing balance, I was really shown that we're told that the world is duality. And duality means two, or it means to oppose. But when you realize that duality is just polarity, so that warmth and cold are just two ends of the same thing, they're attached in the middle, like north and south, or east and west, or dark and light, or masculine and feminine. But ultimately, they're two ends of the same spectrum. Once you realize that you are both of these, you can then center yourself. Once you center yourself, you're balanced. Once you're balanced, you're whole and complete. When you're whole and complete, you can now choose. You're at the middle point of the seesaw. So when you're at the middle point of the seesaw, you can now decide, okay, today I'm going to create from my masculine. Today I'm going to create from my dark side. Today I'm going to create from this side. And you can go off into that and you can journey into it and create from that side with knowing that you're connected to it, but without any attachments. Because once you form an attachment to it, you can then get drawn into that. But as long as you come back to the balance point and then choose where you want to create from the next day, this is what I found is very, very powerful for me, that I can ultimately be connected to everything and create from anything, but then come back to a balance point where before I was very much into the dark and the drugs and the sex. And ultimately, when you focus your attention and you create a powerful emotion in that side, I'm going to become attached to it a little bit. And when you create that attachment, it's quite hard to get out of it unless you have someone there who, and the way I'm going to describe this is I went to a lot of rehab places, expensive ones in London. I'm talking like £800 an hour or something. And I'd be sitting there listening to this guy sitting in his chair with his leg crossed, analysing me. And I'd be thinking, what the fuck do you know? You've never even smoked a joint in your life. You've just read a load of fucking old books sitting on a shelf collecting dust. Because my higher self knew that this guy hadn't experienced it, that he was preaching from a book that he'd read. And I was like, there's no connection here. And ultimately, I stayed in that darkness for a while. And then when I decided to sit in my own energy, and when I had a breakdown, it was very much that. I didn't leave my bedroom for 4 days. So I was in my own energy field for 4 days with no one else. I started to get signs. And this was when I first got into meditation, because I was laying in bed and I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to really slow down my breath and I'm going to hold my breath for as long as I can. And I started doing what's technically breath work and what I teach breath work now, but I'd never seen a video before. This was my higher self saying to me, you need to try these different things, because ultimately, when you try these different things, other different things will come into your reality. And if I said to you, there's a lot of people watching this video now that are going to think, what's this guy on about? Going without food for 40 days. They're going to think that's nuts. When you take the first step into doing something like this, I now have friends and spending time around people that have gone 3-4 years without food or water. I now know people that are going 90 days without food, water, or sleep. Now, I look at those people and think, what the fuck? But I realised that that's what I was doing to someone in my position 2 years ago. So now I know that is awesomely possible. And I could do that if I want to. I don't have to, because my path is different from everyone. We're here to consciously create and evolve. But as a collective, we stopped evolving and we got so far into consuming because our five senses were just getting absorbed by TV, radio, and bullshit outside of us. We were being sold on sex. Because when someone creates an advert promoting beer and then there's a sex scene, ultimately the symbol of that beer with the words on the screen and the sounds coming through, paired with sex, a very powerful emotion, what in effect it does is your attention has now had a fishing rod go out and it's attached itself onto that. Because the emotion of sex is a very powerful one. The symbol of the beer and the words that they're using and the combination of all these vibrations, frequencies and energies, you've now latched onto it and that's drawing it towards you. But when you become very aware of your energy and you learn how to protect and set out barriers so that things outside of you can't come within this auric field, it's almost like you are divinely protected. Now, for me, and you've seen one of my talks before where I talk about how this auric field has always been in your vision in the Bible, in various pictures. When you go into a church and you see an angel, the angel's wings are like this shape around the body. And then there's a halo on top of the angel. Now, your auric field looks exactly like this. If you take away the wings, it's a halo. This is the points where the energy field comes into the body. And if you take away the halo, then the circle around the top disappears and it looks like you've got wings. Now, every single human being is an angel. If you take the word angel in Greek, in ancient Greek, it means angel. It says angelos. Angelos translates to messenger. Now, ultimately, when we're all divinely connected and tuned in, this message that I'm giving you, when you focus on me, your attention, your energy is now on me. And this is in the Celestine prophecy of the book. Now, because the energy is coming through me and your attention's on me, I now have the baton. It's like a sports day race where we are passing the baton on to each other. Now, because that energy is on me, I am now giving a message, and this message is there for you to accept and receive. And if you accept and receive it and you're ready to hear it, ultimately then another message is going to come back to me, whether it's through you or through someone else, because I've passed on that message. There's constant messages being passed on through people, and as long as you're open and connected to receive it, then your next message comes through someone else, whether it be TV, radio, or because ultimately we have 9 clear senses as well. And these are, the clear audience was very strong for me at the beginning. I've now concentrated and I help people tune into their 9 clear senses. But my clear audience was very powerful in that I would ask a question that would then go into my subconscious, and I would get an answer for that question come through in either I'd be sitting in a restaurant and I'd overhear a part of a conversation on the table behind me, but the part I'd hear would be exactly the answer. I'd be like, wow, that's a coincidence. Not coincidence. Coincidences don't exist. It's a synchronicity. It's a trail of breadcrumbs. It's a bridge of incidents that then lead you on to the next one to show you the way. It's basically your ancestors, your guides, angels, spirits, or powerful energies shining a light on the path for you, which is the best path for you to take. Because when you follow that path, it just gets better and better and better and better and better. And that's the spiritual, or that's a spiritual way of looking at that. For a scientific perspective, this would be your subconscious, your higher self, or you creating your reality through focusing on positive energies and not giving your attention to any negative energies. Because when you cut out all negative energies, all you see is positive energies, which your subconscious will then throw more fishing rods out onto positive energies and draw positive energies in. When you completely cut out the negative energies, you don't draw that into your reality. Now, people are going to argue that you can't just forget about this coronavirus and say that it doesn't exist. Now, I'm really, really sorry to say this, but that's exactly what you can do. If your soul has decided to come to Earth to work in a medical profession or a military position, then that's what you're here to. That's your choice. It's your creation. And I thank you for doing that and for exploring your consciousness and expanding in that area. But that's not a reality I've chosen, and I have transcended that. And it's now I don't give any of my attention or energy to it. So therefore, there's no fishing rods being thrown out to that, and I'm not seeing it. Now, for someone who chooses to be a doctor at the moment, they are going to see a lot of this. And unfortunately, when you see more of something, you will have more of that drawn to you. Now, as I said, you choose your experience when you come here. So if you don't want to experience that, then really, really phase it out gradually, phase it out, and you'll see less and less of it. Now, I unsubscribed to all of this coronavirus thing when it first started, and I don't watch TV, I haven't met anyone with it, I don't know anyone with it. And when I go out, I went to Highgate Park yesterday, but Highgate Park was full of people meditating, doing exercise. Now, why is this? It's because I do a lot of exercise, I do a lot of meditation. Highgate Park was rammed with people doing meditation, and I cut someone's hair in the park, and it was a beautiful day, and I experienced a great day. Now, this is what I'm experiencing because this is what's inside my cup, so therefore that's what's on the outside of the cup. As within, so without. Make this connection, and then you will create many causes that will have effects in your life that reflect that. It's a mirror. So this is ultimately our birthright to create what we want to see. And because I'm seeing this, there could have been someone else in Highgate Park seeing something completely different, because we're multidimensional. And I have no say over what you choose to see, and I wouldn't want any say. Now, I see what's going on at the moment is there have been certain people in power, and they have wanted to control what I see. They've wanted to control what you see. They wanted to control what the masses see. But that's not working anymore. The human resonance and the vibration of the planet has raised. The darkness is filtering away and the light's coming through. So ultimately, the people that are trying to control has gone from being what they thought was power to suddenly becoming weakness. And control being weakness, the more you try to control something, the weaker you become. When you let go of things and you go flow, ultimately that's true power. There's a very powerful scene in the film Fight Club where he gets in and he says, let go of that fucking steering wheel. And he's like, no. And he's doing like 80 down the motorway. And he goes, let go of the fucking steering wheel. And he just lets go of the steering wheel and they crash. And they're all like, ah, they're all laughing. And he's like, I felt so free. it feels free when you let go, and you don't need to judge or control anything outside of you. Just let it be. And now when I see someone who's really like, this coronavirus is really, I'm like, that's great. That's your movie. I unsubscribed to that ages ago. My movie's over here. And that's ultimately how you protect your energy, because I'm not attaching an emotion to that. I'm letting them feel theirs own. And although I will talk about what I'm seeing, when I talk about it, I talk it from my perspective. And this is very, very important for anyone who wants to protect their energy, because if I was to say it's not like that, it's like this, that ultimately is now I'm attaching to their reality, and that's drawing that forth. But by saying, no, that's fine, but what I'm seeing is this, and this is how I experience things, ultimately you're raising the vibration of that field, and now it gives them an option to now maybe come onto a timeline that you've created and anchored, because their timeline is slightly different. But because I'm not trying to force a timeline on them, and I'm just showing other options and other doorways that are open, it's now an opportunity for them. So by doing this way and not trying to control anyone, it's just staying straight on my path, protecting my energy, but also talking about my experiences. And this is ultimately what I do when I go on stage now. And this is ultimately why when I used to try to sell myself, I'd be like, this is the way it is, this is what I'm teaching, and I wouldn't have anyone approach me to come and work with me. I made a very conscious decision to stop trying to sell myself and to just talk about my experiences. And the second I did that, I found that I went and talked for a friend up in London, and you know Emmanuel, and afterwards I had like 15, 20 people come up to me and take my details and want to start working with me. So, and from that point onwards, I got several mentees from like Broadstairs, and then I had people in New York asking me, Barcelona, Ibiza, Marbella, and it's just been like, once that first door was open, you open up their energy, and now more people are interested. And I've never had to sell myself once now, and more people are interested in working with me. And it really showed me that I had a blockage up there, scared of getting clients, and that blockage was scared because I felt uncomfortable selling myself. The second I stopped selling myself and started believing in myself, that belief within myself then translated into belief from the masses. So now I get people coming to work with me because my belief is mirrored in their belief. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. I'm just sitting here breathing deeply and just absorbing everything that you're saying. Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I love it. I believe a very similar thing. I believe we're all here to create our own movies, and what you watch, what you consume becomes your reality. If you're watching soaps and dramas all the time, then you're going to attract lots of drama in your life, right? And if you're surrounded by free and open people who are full of love and compassion, then you're going to attract more of that. So I love that. And very interestingly as well, just yesterday, I was thinking to rewatch Fight Club because I know we get lots of these little seeds and things thrown in, don't we, during these kind of movies. And there's one part in Fight Club, which is where they try and collapse the financial system.
Yeah, so it's like Nazera and Jazeera that's coming at the moment, supposedly. It's very similar, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is something that's being talked about a lot right now, the potential collapse of our financial system and moving to a different version of reality where people aren't bound by those debts that were created in not so nice ways. And yeah, so now you've told me again, so you've given me another confirmation, and I love that. Yeah, I love, you also said something like coincidences and bridges of incidences, and I think that's how I follow things. If I hear something once and it perks my interest, I'm like, oh. If I hear something twice, I'm like, okay, I probably need to do this. If I hear something 3 times in a short space of time, I'm like, I'm all over this. And now usually I take action on the second time because I don't even need to wait for the third. I think it's a wonderful part of the game that I've created. It's like, give me a clue, give me 2 signs, I'm in.
So that's ultimately it's vibrational resonance, isn't it? It's law of attraction or karma, because whatever we put out comes back to us. And we're starting to make decisions from what I'm seeing, from gut feeling, which is our lower 3 energy centers, and from intuition, which is our top 3 energy centers. Whereas before, we've been using our minds, and the mind can be referred to as the monkey mind, because once you think something, if you connect doubt to it, doubt ultimately leads to failure, because once you connect doubt, you'll find more things to doubt. Whereas if you only focus on what you want and the positives and succeeding, then ultimately you'll find more success and more positives, because whatever way you tip that seesaw, more focus and more energy goes to it. Oh, we're going this way. And then you can tip it back and bring it back to balance point and focus on success. And then we're going to success. And I find it's a lot better to work with my gut, more feelings and thoughts, because now when I ask people, what do you think? I don't really want to know what they think. What they think can just do one, fuck off. I want to know how you feel about something. I want to know, how do you feel about this film? How do you feel about this food? How do you feel about me? I don't want to know what you think, because your think can be cluttered with all sorts of bollocks that I don't need to know. Ultimately, if you feel good and you feel love and you feel attraction, or you feel a vibrational resonance towards me, then we're going to work together. Whatever you think has got no effect on me at all. It's none of my business, as some people would say.
It's a very subtle shift. I do notice that, because I've been working with clients now for 4 years, in this way. I used to ask people, oh, what do you think about that? But now I always say, what do you feel about that? Or how, instead of saying, so what do you think? I say, what do you feel? It is a very one word shift, but it makes all the difference. And especially when I'm speaking to someone, you mentioned human design earlier, especially if I'm speaking to someone who is working from that gut place, which is a lot of people on the planet, they are very in tune with their gut instincts, or they're asking them how they feel is really, really important. So absolutely, I'm on board with that.
That's Elliott, interesting. You introduced me to that, actually. I met someone the other day who had every energy center full apart from one. Really interesting.
Yeah, human design, for anyone who isn't aware, it's a wonderful system. It's similar to astrology. I can see an astrology book on your shelf there. Similar to astrology, it works based on the time you were born, and the place you were born determines a lot about your DNA, your personality, and your purpose. And the idea is that you choose when you are born and where you are born, because you want to be configured in a certain way. And this is your ultimate design blueprint that you created for yourself. And when you're in alignment with that, everything in your life is just incredible. And if you're not feeling so great right now, or things aren't going quite the way you want, it's probably because you're trying to live by someone else's design. So I really recommend everyone check that out. And if you're interested in a reading, then do let me know. But you can go get your own chart. You can go to mybodygraph.com. It's completely free, mybodygraph.com, and you can get your chart. You will need to go deep into learning it. So I do recommend get a reading from someone who is experienced. And if you want to know more, like I said, I'll pop a little link or something below and you can check that out.
Yeah, so you did mine for me, and that brought forth that I am a 1 to 3 investigator, martyr, manifester, which means ultimately when you listen to the video that I've just talked about, investigator martyr is actually that I go out and try things that people think, oh, that can't be done. You're going to die if you do that. And then I come back and I feed information to people like, oi, this bullshit they've been feeding us about food, this is all bollocks, mate. They're just keeping us in an industry, buying food 3 times a day, mugging us off with money, when we could just ultimately be going to the sun or here. Various other things like that. And the manifestation part is emotional manifester, how I can create things very quickly just through my thoughts and my emotions. And now I'm starting to see that things are really coming into my reality very quickly when I think about them with enough powerful emotion. And I generally would just put positive, powerful emotions to things that I want now, and they come in very, very quickly. But before, I was trying to live by going to work every day and my attention and energy going into hairdressing and cutting people's hair. Now, I thank this industry that I went into, because ultimately I was spending time with 10 people, different people every day, and I was learning how to read people and understand people and how to energetically understand people. But for a perspective of earning money, it wasn't very powerful for me, because my attention and my energy was going all over the place. Ultimately, I had to lose my job and step away and do nothing for a while in order to realize how to focus my energy. And now I actually get more done and earn more money doing less than what I was doing when I was working 10 hours a day. And there's a great book called The 4 Hour Work Week, which I haven't read, but a lot of people have told me about. which I almost feel like I understand anyway, because I've been through that process myself. And interestingly, going back to, we could all create different worlds. What I want to point out is that if we were all creating the same world, we wouldn't be evolving. So ultimately, when I say to someone who's a doctor or in the military, thank you for doing what you're doing, I'm saying that because I don't want to do that. And ultimately, by them doing it and enjoying it, as a race and as a collective, we're evolving because we're expanding in different areas. Whereas if we was all expanding in the same area, we're just expanding all in spirituality, and then there's no one expanding it in that area. And then we're missing out in that area and that area. But ultimately, as a consciousness, we're now going boom, 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 and expanding and evolving in all these different areas, as opposed to just sitting here at home eating crisps, playing with our dicks, watching porn. So we're getting so much more done now on a collective level. It's just fucking brilliant.
It is a whole different lifestyle when that is your life, and that was my life for a long time. Not so much crisps, more steaks.
Yeah.
Steaks and porn, and beer. That was a whole different version of reality. And I'm so glad that, similar to you, I became aware of energy and now don't eat meat and don't drink alcohol. And yeah, porn is an interesting one. I used to be addicted. I would say I had to have porn there in order to be able to. But it wasn't even that I was trying to pleasure myself, right? It was just to ejaculate. That was the primary purpose. And now learning about conscious sexuality and stepping through that, moving to a place where I don't even need to ejaculate. I don't think I've ejaculated in over a month now. And it's a very interesting journey. I know you've gone on a journey with your conscious sexuality, and kind of feels like some of that wants to come through.
So
what's your experience been?
I was actually with a girl yesterday and was talking about it, and how before, with the whole porn thing, it's all about the destination. It's about, boom, the orgasm. Whereas now you're stepping into conscious sex, we're going from one polarity to the other, and it's more about the journey. So it's about enjoying the moments before orgasm and not orgasming. Whereas before, it was just about, boom, get straight to that orgasm, and that's it. So ultimately, we're going to come to a point where you combine the two. We get back to that middle point, and you enjoy the journey and the destination. Because at the moment, we're just being shown, we're shown as many aspects as we are, as we can. So ultimately, some people will want to create from going straight to the orgasm. Some people will want to enjoy the journey. Some people will want to enjoy both. But if you don't experience all aspects of this, then how are you going to know? We're here to have as many experiences. We're spiritual beings having physical experiences. And the more physical experiences we have, the more we can then cherry pick what we want and create our own. When we create our own reality, we can cherry pick the good parts that we want. And the cherry picking the good parts that I want, I'm going to be the cherry picks that you want. That's why your reality is multidimensional, because I might like sex with 3 girls at once and 2 guys. I might like sex with just guys. I might like sex with just girls. Ultimately, what I like will then be brought forth into my dimension or my reality. And it doesn't have to be part of yours, because you've cherry picked your own. You've had loads of experiences, and the more experiences you have, the more in-depth your reality can be, because you can piece it together as a big jigsaw because you've had more experiences. Whereas someone who's had less experiences, reality is going to be a slightly smaller jigsaw puzzle, because they've had less experiences. So my advice is have as many experiences as you can. I mean, growing up, talking about sex, I had a lot of sex when I was younger, and there was not much emotion in it, really. I had a lot of sex because I was insecure. I was trying to impress my friends. And then I went a different way and started having sex with people that I really felt a connection with. And then I tried sex with 2 girls, and I tried sex with a girl and a guy. And I've tried many different things. And I would never say that I'd never do anything again, because I am a spiritual being having physical experiences. And I've had a lot of physical experiences, and I thank all those physical experiences, because now I can cherry pick what ones I want. And what ones I want today don't necessarily have to be what ones I want tomorrow, because belief systems are like furniture, like I said, and I can change the furniture if I decide to then step into another reality. And ultimately, what I'm being shown is by doing this and evolving and constantly having different energies and eating less food, for me, has been very important, less water. It's been proven that eating less food and fasting certain times a month increases your lifespan by 30%. Now, I believe that you can transcend death. I believe that you can continue to live for as long as you want. There's stories of Noah living to 800. There's stories of Thoth living for 15,000 years within one body, because he was thrice-born. He was also Hermes and Mercury. So when you learn how to use energy in its purest form and utilize it, and from what I'm being shown now is that now I've transcended food, fats and carbs. Whenever I eat food now, the intention that I put into it is ultimately more important. So say I want to eat 2 pizzas a day, I could sit there. It would be dairy-free for me because I have made that conscious decision not to eat that anymore. That's something that I've now taken out of my reality to the point where it's not going to exist anymore. But if I put my intention into this pizza, and pizza in the old paradigm I used to live in would not be a great food because it's very high carb and very high fat with very little protein. But in the reality I live in now, I could put muscle growth into that pizza, and I could project that into that pizza. And when I eat it, ultimately what's within me is going to be projected into it and come back to me. This, again, sounds very far-fetched for people, but understand this is the reality I'm creating. This is the reality I've anchored. And when I anchor this is something that you can jump onto very easily, because when I create and anchor timelines, I'm very, very meticulous in writing down the processes that I've gone to create and anchor those timelines, so that then when I talk to someone, when you come on one of my fasting retreats or one of my meditation retreats, because I've anchored my way of doing it very much, and because I'm very good and clear and precise at explaining how I do it, it then makes it a lot easier, and that communication comes through in yourself where it activates it within you. And I can teach you how to do this for yourself, so you can start creating your own timelines that I haven't even thought of, and then anchoring those. And I could be like, oh, wow, you created this timeline where we can walk on water. Fuck, I've always wanted to do that. Now can you show me how to do it? And then you can break that down to me. I mean, if I was to go really, really leading edge right now, I had a mushroom experience about 2 weeks ago where I sat down and I brought in my higher self, and he showed me how mobile phones and computers are just a fucking waste of time. They're actually reflecting what's already in us, because he brought up a heads-up display. And when he brought up this heads-up display, I could say, what's the weather? And it would go, ping, this is the weather. And I could say, how do I get to Simon's kitchen? Or how do I get to Dartford? And it would go, ping, and a sat-nav would come up in front of me. Like on a BMW car windscreen, when you've got the speed and the navigation, the temperature, I could do this in my own peripheral vision. And not only that, but I was bridging 2 worlds. So I could see this guy's bedroom that I was in, walking around, and then I walked to his kitchen, but then I could see in the background an arrow, I could see the temperature, and then I could say, okay, now I want more depth and clarity to this reality. And I could have more depth and clarity on that, and less of this reality would be shown, and it would be more of just a screen, bang. And then I could say, now fade that out and bring in both worlds, and now fade out the navigation and just bring the normal world, so I'd see what I was seeing now. And ultimately, I could change it just by asking my higher self or my guides, ancestors, or archangels, ascended masters, totem spirits, totem spirit animals. You might want to write them on the screen somewhere because there's quite big ones, but they're all things that we can connect with and utilize when we know that they're there. So when I ask you for help, if you help me, I don't thank you for it, you're less likely to help me. But when you help me and I say thank you for your help, more please, you ultimately going to help me more. So when you become aware of these angels, spirits, guide, archangels, totem spirits, and totem spirit animals that are around you and your ancestors, when they give you a breadcrumb or a bridge of incidents or a synchronicity, sit down or in your head mentally or say out loud, thank you for this communication, more please. Ultimately, it'll come back to you quicker because you're casting out more webs then on more positive things. This is something I've been consciously doing for probably about 3 or 4 years now. And that was recommended to me by my astral projection coach 2 or 3 years ago, Todd Akamesis. Him and his wife, Sky, are very, very great leading edge. You should try and get them on your show. Todd's very much astral projection, Sky's theta healing. You know both of them. Very, very influential people who are great in their perspective fields and very different fields as well, which is great.
Yeah, I've been on one of Todd's astral projection courses as well. Really, really good. Mm-hmm. Elliott, you talked about a couple of things. You just sparked something in me. So you talked about people living to be 800 years old. And there's this series of books called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And when you get into this, it talks about these masters who have become what they call God realized. And they basically live to be 500 plus years old. And there's documentation. So these books were written over 100 years ago. A group of scientists, complete non-believers, went out to India to find these masters, and they proved it to them, like all of these things that can happen. And one of the things that they did was fascinating, and I think I've shared this with you, but they got one of their group to stay with a master in one city. The rest of the group went and traveled 5 days away. 5 days away. And then this master appeared in that city and the other city at the same time. He was still physically there with the other person from the party, and he managed to transfer his whole body, not his consciousness, his physical body, into the room they were in while the door was closed. And they could touch it, they could see him, he was real. And when I read stuff like this, and I also have this book, which actually is your book, which I borrowed, which is Autobiography of Yogi. It talks about exactly the same thing, that these masters live for hundreds of years. They can transfer, they can teleport their bodies wherever they want. They can heal anyone. I just literally read today that there was somebody who died. He was dead for half a day, and one of the masters brought him back to life. He was in rigor mortis. He dropped 7 drops of this oil into his mouth, which was just a meaningless token. The guy came back to life. And so in terms of what's possible for your future, if you imagine your most incredible future, what are you calling in, Elliott, in your lifetime?
Okay, so I've been working on what you've just been talking about very much in the last 3 years, because the first time I met Todd and Sky, they introduced me to the fact that I was a time traveler, a quantum jumper, and that I'd been out of body experiencing my whole life without realizing that this was something not everybody was doing, because ultimately I was conscious within my dreams. This is lucid dreaming, which is a form of out of body experiencing. So I then spent 2 weeks with Todd in Normandy in France, learning how to do this. And incidentally enough, on my first night, I was in a room with 3 boys. I came out of body and pulled the boy next to me out of his body. And I never mentioned it to him. And he went down into the room with 40 people the next morning and said, Elliott pulled me out of my body. And then by everybody in the room hearing that, everybody was like, wow, this is real. And I actually had my first out-of-body experience where I saw myself come out of my body and see myself through his guidance, which I'm obviously very thankful for, because there was always a disconnection for me. I'd go to sleep and then I'd wake up in, say, my village, and then I'd be flying around my village and I'd be conscious looking at things, and I could always control the dream. But for me to actually step out of body, turn around and see, and then go Egypt, or the first time it happened for me, I actually was in my village and I saw a bus stop and it was red and I said bus stop blue. I started moving things around the village, and then I had a girl walk towards me and I said she's going to kiss me, and she kissed me and I got so excited I was back in body. But then I learned how to progress it that further forward, and now I'm like, okay, now I can consciously send my consciousness to somewhere else. How do I now lighten this physical form so that physical form can then pass through and come with that consciousness and reassimilate itself the other end? Not even reassimilate itself, but have another version, so that ultimately we're light vibrating at a certain frequency. And I'm being shown various ways of how to do things, because the more attention I put onto them, for instance, I learned how to see energy and auras. Now I can see energy. Something that's been very important for me to learn over the last few years is telekinesis. So telekinesis is when, say, I'm looking at this book on the shelf and I want to move that book towards me, moving it without touching it. Now, I asked my higher self to show me how to do this, and I was shown that in order to do this, you have to learn how to manipulate the energy in the air, to use the energy between you, because ultimately you're connected to this thing, but you're not attached to it. And when you can move the energy between you and that, then ultimately you can bring it towards you. Then I was shown the next level, which was I started studying a guy who lives out in Fort Lauderdale in Miami, who Stan Lee, the guy who writes the Marvel films, based a few of his characters on. And they've recorded him moving things and wooden things so that it's not magnets. And they put brain scans on him and they show him how his brainwaves go. And his brainwaves go very, very low. They go down into a theta, almost into a delta, which is like sleep or death. And when he meditates down into that, he then jumps from like a very, very low vibration up to like a very high one, like a gamma or something, but almost jumps the waves in between. Now, every thought form we have is a vibration that we send out. It's like when you read comic books when you was younger, when someone had a thought, you'd read the thought form. So when you have a thought vibration, it goes out. This is how telepathy works. When I have a thought form, it's out in the ether. And then when you can pick up on that thought form and tune into it, ultimately, I've had it happen at one of your events before when I was sitting next to a girl and I wrote something down on a piece of paper and she said to me, "Why did you write that?" And I said, "Oh, this is the reason why." And she said, "It's really funny because I thought it just before you wrote it." And I did a little experiment with her. I said, "Now we're going to connect." And we connected with each other and we stared into each other's eyes and done a bit of eye gazing. And I was thinking something and sending a feeling. And I said to her, what I was sending was the color yellow. And I was sending it from my solar plexus because the solar plexus is the yellow energy center. And she said to me, "Gold." And she said, and I was getting a really powerful feeling in my stomach. And I said to her, "There we go. You was thinking gold. I was sending yellow. I was sending it from my solar plexus." And it's very powerful that we can do this. Now, with the thought forms, in order to move something, we have to lower the vibration and send out a very powerful vibration, which in effect has a ripple effect into the energy around us. So that's how this guy's moving things. And it's interesting that he only really ever moves things in one direction. So he's sending out the vibration, which is affecting the energy and pushing the thing away from him. So he's now shown me that connection, and I can now work on that connection and then try to work how to reverse it or bounce it back. But until we start putting our attention onto these things, we're never going to know because there's a veil over them. But now I've just spoken this, there's going to be people out there like, "Fucking hell, that makes sense." And now people out there are going to start going, "Oh, they've seen something that I haven't seen, and they have seen something I haven't seen." And ultimately, when we start communicating with each other as a collective, this is how we start going forward and bounding forward leaps and bounds. I mean, I wrote an article probably about 3 years ago that I saw that we'd reached a Rubicon of 5.5 billion people being awakened enough to the point where there was going to be one last push of darkness, that we had in effect created such a big wave that the darkness is lost, but there'd be a comeback. And this is what I see as coronavirus was. But there's always hints and clues in there to show you that if you look at it from another perspective, then it's actually a positive thing, which is why I made that video about coronavirus being the crown, the aura around the sun, and ultimately you are the sun. You're the son of the sun, the son of God, and you have an aura around you of plasma. And when you use it properly through utilizing your crown or your corona, you can take something that's ultimately been portrayed in the media, and the media is trying to get your attention for you to spend money on and to absorb your energy, or you can take it and focus on something which is empowering you. So where you choose to place it, it's up to you. It's your free will. I have now told you what I place mine on. I haven't told you where to place yours. That's your free will, and I respect your free will. I love you, and we're all here to experience different things, but I've now told you what I am, and I'm opening the doorway for you to say, you can experience this if you just place your attention on it. That's up to you. I'll see you wherever you decide to go. I hope you enjoy it, but I'll be over here having fun.
I always loved shows like the X-Men when I was younger. You know, this idea that we can mutate and evolve and activate these powers, and that we're also special, just really resonated with me. And I had this vision of bringing together these mutants, right? and it's really happening now. I see it. I have so many different friends who have superhuman gifts and abilities, and I think it's important for people just to read these materials, like learn these things, expose themselves, right? Just go and research these people, like who you said, who can move these things with their mind and just get an idea of what is really possible for you and expand their awareness. I'd love, Elliott, is there any kind of process or exercise or something you could possibly do for us, for everyone who's tuning in, to help us to connect with our more multidimensional selves, to help us to open and expand in ways? Anything you feel guided to share with us, a meditation or breath work or anything really?
I mean, for me, it's a combination of many things. It's a combination of, I have personally my routine of a morning when I first get up would be to get myself vibrating at the highest level as possible. So some people will say yoga's good first thing in the morning. Personally, I think yoga's good before bed because it relaxes the muscles and stretches them. I think first thing in the morning, it's good to get up and have a little meditation and visualization, and then go for a walk or go for a run, because ultimately this gets the energy moving around in your body. If you have the visualization first or the meditation, and you preempt or you focus and create what you want your day to be like. So get out of bed, meditate for 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. For the first 5 minutes, just concentrate on the breath, just slowly breathing in. I tend to do, there's one particular breath work called the 1 minute breath. I speak to a girl in America called Audra. She's been breatharian for a little while, or she calls herself liquidarian. So she doesn't eat a huge amount, but when she does, it's mainly juices and stuff or soups. And she does a lot of 1 minute breath work where you spend 15 seconds breathing in, 15 seconds holding, 15 seconds breathing out, 15 seconds holding. So ultimately, if you can do that for 5 minutes, you've had 5 breaths in 5 minutes. It's quite difficult at first because your initial reaction is the last 2 sections of it to speed up a little bit. But when you practice this for a while, you really become conscious of your breath. I can see you giving it a go now, so I'll let you focus on that and have a little go. But if you find that difficult, the other ways to do it is 30 seconds in, no pause, 30 seconds out. 30 seconds out bit is quite difficult, but the 30 seconds in bit's very easy. If you can do this for 3 to 5 minutes, again, this is practically getting you into meditation because you're taking your energy and attention away from all outer senses and you're bringing it into the body, which is where the creative energy is most powerful. That would be my initial thing to do first thing in the morning, and then to visualize how I want my day to go. So by visualizing that I want to get up and go for a run and then have loads of clients and help lots of people, I'm now casting that web out. When I cast that web out, I then forget about it. I detach from it and it goes out into the ether. That's my thought boom. That's now going to be magnetized towards me. And to speed that magnetization up, I'll go for a run. And by going for a run, and sometimes I do breath work while I'm running, sometimes I do affirmations while I'm running, I now speed up and increase my heart rate. So I get an elevated heart rate, which for me then speeds up the energy within my aura. That starts connecting things and drawing them towards you quicker. I would then get home and probably do some 5 to 10 minutes of holotropic breath work, which really makes me feel amazing. It really connects me with everything. We've done lots together before. It's almost like it can become so orgasmic that when you learn how to do it properly and you can release DMT within the body, it's almost as nice as, it's as powerful as taking ecstasy or doing a balloon if you've ever been in the recreational drug. And recreational drugs is an interesting one because it can sound like recreational drugs, as in you're wrecking it, or recreational, that you can use them to recreate things. And I very much have used them. Once I detached from them, I started to use them to recreate things and to see things from different perspectives. Ultimately, because I took it into such a negative, I placed a negative vibration on a drug, which was its own entity within itself. So that drug, whether it be cocaine, ecstasy, or whatever, because I'd attached a negative entity to it, that entity is an entity on its own. Now, if someone attaches an entity to me and someone starts saying I'm negative, I'm going to now try and prove to them that I'm not negative, or I'm going to keep trying to teach them a lesson. Ultimately, when I took it back and I turned it into a positive, and then after I turned it into a positive, I let it be its own thing, I can now use that for either purpose because I've now let it be its own thing. I've not tried to control an entity outside of me. Does that make sense? And the reason I was addicted to it is because I tried to attach a negative thing and push it away from me. And the more you try and push something away from you, sometimes the more it comes back to you. So this is why I feel like I know a lot of people that AA and Alcoholics Anonymous and NA and all of these different groups, I know people that it's helped because they've stopped doing drugs. But when I go to these groups, I never felt a resonation to them because I felt like ultimately, for me, it didn't work because I was attaching a negative thing to that and pushing it away from me, and it kept on coming back to me. Whereas when I made peace with it and thanked it for the lesson it taught me, I always had a little bit of a block at these meetings where you had to stand up and say, hi, my name is blah, 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 and I am this. Because when you confirm something and you keep saying it, yes, it's good to initially have that admittability that you are facing this, but to keep repeating it on a daily basis, that then becomes a program or a paradigm within your subconscious, and then you're just going to keep on wanting to do more of it. For me, that's one of the things that I felt needed to be changed. But again, this is my perspective that's worked for me. And if it's worked for you, then that's brilliant. And it's worked for millions of people all over the world. So that's their reality. I'm now showing you what's worked for me. And it's good for you to get as many perspectives as possible and then to line them up and see which one resonates for you. Because the Alcoholics Anonymous or the NA Anonymous or this group, or maybe learning how to wean yourself off and maybe enjoy it in a different way. There's all these different possibilities. As we said earlier, nothing is impossible when I'm possible. So line up all the possibilities and then pick which one you like and then put your attention and energy on it, and that then becomes your reality. But don't ever have someone try to put you in a box, because you are unlimited. You're a conscious being. You can create whatever you want. So that's my advice. That's how I see myself. And if you want to see yourself like it, then listen to this and take whatever resonates. Whatever doesn't resonate, just fuck it off and pass it by. And when I say pass it by, just observe it like clouds in the sky, and then it doesn't affect your reality. So that's ultimately you in full power of your energy. That's ultimately how I am in full power of my energy. So take what you will from it. And yeah, piece together your own reality with my blessing.
I love this idea of, and I also share a similar thing when I speak. This is my reality. Take from it what you will. If it resonates, keep it, try it on, see if it works for you. If it doesn't resonate, leave it. It's not for you right now. That's totally cool. I think that's super, super important, and a good reminder and check-in. It's something you talk about, Elliott, and this is a key difference between us, because we have lots of similarities, but we also have some differences, and I value that. I think diversity is beautiful. Wouldn't it be boring if everybody was the same? This Definitely. Idea that you can, or you have found a way to program alcohol or drugs or whatever that is as a positive and still be able to consume them as a spiritual being, and for them not to have a negative effect on you, is something I personally have not done. Like, I don't drink any alcohol or do any drugs or anything like that anymore, because as part of me doesn't want the adverse health effects, and health is one of my highest values.
Why would there be adverse health effects unless you're perceiving them to give you adverse health effects?
Absolutely. It's very, very interesting. And it reminded me of breatharianism, because when you study breatharianism, one of the things that they do, or some breatharians do, I wouldn't claim that all breatharians do this, is they actually program their saliva with whatever nutrients, vitamins, minerals, everything that they need, right? They can just imagine these things for being in their body and imagine receiving all the nutrients they need from the sun, from the earth, from the breath, and their body then can produce these things. And this is something you've talked about too. Can you explain this a little bit more? Because I've never heard anyone else really talk about it in the way that you do. This idea that our body can create vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. Is that still something you ascribe to?
Yeah, so the best way for me what's coming through for me to describe this is, there's a lot of people floating around on Instagram saying that food can either kill you or heal you. Now, from my perspective, food only kills you. The only way food will heal you is if it vibrates at a higher level than your body does. So ultimately, if you're eating meat, then that is a very low vibration. By moving on to vegetables, it vibrates higher. By moving on to fruits, it vibrates higher. Vegetables are 72% water. Fruits are 90% water. They're highly more full of light and electric. So when you look at cacao, is a very, very electric food. If you photograph foods with a Kirlian camera, you see the energy that they produce. Ultimately, if you take a picture of someone that's breatharian and very connected and very high vibration, then they're going to show more energy than, say, a banana or pineapple or mangoes, which are very, very high vibration, because ultimately they spend more time in natural sunlight. For me, sunlight is information. One of the biggest downfalls that man has ever done, in my views, is to say, don't spend time in sunlight, and to say, keep your water out of sunlight. For me, this is insanity, because the water that we drink at the moment, the reason the water we drink at the moment is not great for us is, one, because most companies are putting fluoride in it, which is absolute bollocks, and that's a crime against humanity, in my opinion. Fluoride calcifies. Interesting.
Just give Elliott a moment to recoup. There's something coming through him right now, so I'll just let him cough that out. Yeah, absolutely. Fluoride's very interesting. Looking forward to seeing what you have to say about it.
Yeah, so in my opinion, well, fluoride, when you boil your kettle, there's a lot of scum in your kettle. There's a lot of calcification. Some studies have shown that this calcifies the pineal gland. Pineal gland is the third eye. Ultimately, this is our intuition. Now, when we're not using our intuition properly, we're more likely to use the mind. As we've said earlier, the mind can lead you on to overthinking, and it can cause you to make decisions that are not for your highest good. Whereas if you make decisions from your intuition and your gut, interestingly enough, the energies and the bacteria in your gut play a big, important role in the decisions you make. So ultimately, if you're putting in lots of low vibration or fear, then the decisions you're going to make are going to lead you to more of that. But we get back to the food and the different vibrations of it. So ultimately, the highest vibration foods that I've studied are pineapples, mangoes. Cacao is one of the most powerful ones there is. It's the earth that it's grown in and the energies and the vibrations. If you're getting very, very good, high quality, fair trade organic cacao, I've got a image I can send you over. You can pop in just here of tomatoes, of apples, and of cacao, and all the different energies when it's taken with a Kirlian photography camera. Now, ultimately, if you're vibrating at a higher level than even cacao, by putting cacao into your body, you're now going to have to process that. So it's going to lower your vibration. Does that make sense? But you have to get rid of all of these limiting beliefs in order to get to that point. Because if you're still believing that you need to eat these things and that they're a higher vibration, then ultimately they will be a higher vibration. So I would like to ultimately get to the stage, and this gets back to the question when you asked me, where would you like to get to? That I now have taken back all of my energy from everything outside of me, and I choose what I give it to. So I was even planning on doing a test next year where for, say, the first month of the year, I would eat 3 to 4 large vegan pizzas every day. And by doing this, I want to show completely the opposite of not eating and not losing weight. I wanted to eat, say, 5,000 calories a day of what is perceived by other people to be absolute dog shit proteins, fats, and carbs. And because I've transcended proteins, fats, and carbs, the intention that I'm putting into this food is that I am going to maintain muscle and I'm going to not gain any fat. And because my belief's so strong in this, that's what comes through in that. So ultimately, the food has now lost all control, and I am in control of everything that goes into my body. So that is something that I'm putting into plan in the future, just to show people how the mind is so powerful. It's more powerful than what anyone has actually thought up until this point. And I've been expanding it in so many different ways at the moment. I've got one topic at the moment that I won't even bring into this conversation because it's so far out there for me. I've actually experienced it, but for me to talk about it when I haven't got enough belief in those 2 experiences I've had, all I will say to you is it's about spending lots of time underwater, and how we can ultimately, the breath is important, but you might even be able to transcend breath.
In this exact book, Autobiography of a Yogi, I really recommend everyone check this out. They go into a state where they stop breathing, all their organs stop pumping, the heart stops beating, they're in a suspended animation state. And this is the state they get in to then transport and teleport their body to another location. You have to get to that state before you're able to teleport yourself. It explains very, very clearly in here the exact step-by-step for how to do it. And yeah, you have to go into this state of almost like this state where you don't even need air. You don't need it.
Well, I believe Thoth, when he talks in the Emerald Tablets about lasting for 15,000 years, he'd go into his chamber in his pyramid or wherever he was, and there would be states where he would go into, which ultimately I feel is exactly that you slow down your heart rate, you slow down your cells, you slow down your breathing to such a point where you're preserved. Now, what I've been shown, and it's going to come out now anyway, so you've led me into it, is that you can do this whilst walking around. So once you become so in tune with yourself, you could stop breathing, you could stop your heart, you could just become the thought behind the physical. So this is carbon meat suit we embody. Interestingly enough, carbon's scientific number is 666. So technically we are the beast. But there's a lot of numbers out there, and there's a lot of things that society will try to demonize. Like the word Illuminati actually means the illuminated people, the light showers. But people will try to make you think that this is negative families and negative this and negative that, because they want to keep you away from the truth of it. The number 13 is unlucky number, Friday the 13th. Jesus had 12 disciples. That makes him the number 13. The number 13 is a very positive number. There are 12 dimensions within man. There are 12 disciples. There are 12 astrology signs. All these things are there to the 12 disciples. For me, there's many people that believe we have 12 personalities, and that as we're growing up, we'll step into one personality to handle a certain situation, and we'll step into another personality. When we collect all of these 12 personalities, or these 12 dimensions, or these 12 astrology signs, astrology for me, I feel like I've transcended astrology now. I looked into it. I used to use it for guidance, and it was great to use it for guidance because it gave me some good insights. But ultimately, I now realize that I am all 12 of these symbols. And that when I realized I am Taurus, I am Aries, I am Gemini, I am this, I'm all of them. It was just trying to disconnect me from my wholeness. But now I am balanced, whole and complete. I realize that I'm all of these things. And stepping back into that balance point and that wholeness is when you can then start to say, okay, I'm not that person. And sometimes when you read, I know some people that read astrology and they follow it and they get very down when something negative's told them. And when you get down about that, you're in fact actually drawing that into your reality, because you've just given your power away to something that you don't want. As if you was to say and read one of your other, we have many star signs anyway, because my moon will be in certain star sign. We have many different star signs, rising star signs. So when you really study these things and look into, for me, it was following Pythagoras. Pythagoras used to say that he'd make his students study astrology, numerology, he'd make them fast. He would subscribe that they all be vegetarians if they do eat, and he would also make them do a 5-year vow of silence. So these are some of the things I threw myself into, and ultimately my personal development came on leaps and bounds when I started studying these things. So then I could then choose which ones I wanted to incorporate on a daily basis. But I'd definitely recommend looking into those if you wanted to start a personal development journey. That would be my recommendation, for sure.
Amazing. And you used to tell me, Elliott, about this vision you had for 2026. Is that still a timeline that you are aligning with, your vision?
I think that's for me personally, I feel like I'm on that timeline already. So I'm just a way shower of that timeline now. I've anchored it, and I know many other people that have anchored it. So now I know people in South America, I know people in Israel, I know people in Russia, I know people that have anchored this timeline all over the world. So now it's anchored. I think we're well on target for that. And that prediction was that by 2026, the human race will only eat food for pleasure. They won't need to eat it for energy anymore, because we would have realized that there are plenty of other purer energy sources out there, like sunlight, earthing, trees, and even with each other. I mean, this interaction that we're having right now, what we're being shown through technology, like when you get to Samsungs now, you can, if I'm running low on battery, I can place your phone on my battery and my phone will give you battery. Yeah, so I can show you techniques where if we hug each other right, so heart to heart, through certain breathing techniques, we can exchange energy with each other. These energy exchanges are ultimately more pure than putting cellular memory, because the way I saw Sadhguru explain it one time is that he wouldn't let his daughter drink water if it was handed to her from someone who's angry, because that water on a cellular level has absorbed some of that anger, and now that will pass through his daughter. So it's very important for me when I buy water now. If I buy water, I mean, generally I'll get water from springs or rivers and filter it now, but I will place it in the garden for 5 days in a clear container, and I'll let it absorb as much sunlight and as much nature sounds, which is generally 432 megahertz. We haven't touched on solfeggio frequencies, but I know, I'm quite big on that sounds affect water, and that Masaru Emoto showed that if you play solfeggio frequencies or you speak lovingly, saying beautiful, love and kindness to water, it creates angelic crystalline shapes within the water structure. Whereas if you speak negatively or play rock music or say fuck off, die, I hate you, this is ultimately going to have a very clouded, polluted colour. It's interesting that our bodies are 72% water, and this is how people can... I think you might have heard me talk about how the human language is a poor form of communication. Just like how I say food is a poor form of energy, the human language can be a poor form of communication depending on who you're talking to. Because if we're talking very high neuro-linguistic program, positive, uplifting words, that's just raise that vibration in that sentence very, very quickly, which is ultimately going to have an effect on that person you're talking to. Whereas if you're talking very negatively and you're talking about how dark and dismal and really crap it is, that's just, you can even feel the tones in those different ones. And ultimately that's going to affect the water in your body and bring you into that. Unless you know how to protect your energy field and shield yourself, and then everything just bounces off and you're internal. So that's ultimately what I'm trying to teach people, is how to go within and to secure a very, very internal, strong, positive, healthy, abundant structure within, so that that's then projected into their shield, and anything of a lower vibration just bounces off. So if you want to learn more about this, then yeah, by all means get in contact with me or get in contact with Luke and we can talk to you more about it. If you don't want to, I respect that and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, absolutely, Elliott. I'll be posting all the links and stuff for everyone to contact you below. I really recommend Elliott's retreats. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about fasting, and he is the mind, body, soul, spirit coach. You can find him on YouTube, on Facebook, on everywhere, all channels. And I'll post all the links below for Elliott as well, and everything that he talked about. Elliott, we are coming up towards the end of this particular episode. It's been absolutely amazing, and thank you for being on the leading edge, and thank you for all the inspiration you've given me and just proving to me what is possible in this world. Like, I didn't even, before I met you, I thought I was expanded, but you have expanded me even more. And so really thank you for that. I guess if you were to leave the people who are tuning in right now with a message, and you know that they will receive it on the deepest possible level, what would you want everybody to know right now?
First of all, I'll say thank you to you as well, because before I started this journey, I would never have got on stage and spoken in front of hundreds or possibly even thousands of people, whereas you helped me recover my voice and what I now see as my throat chakra. Although my throat chakra in human design is very powerful, over my life, I'd told so many lies that I'd actually created a bit of a blockage around that. And through learning public speaking and seeing the different easy ways you've taught me on how to go forward and express myself in various ways with emotions, it ultimately helped me get to where I am now. So you very much helped me, and there's been some energy exchanges between the two of us. This is what I see, how when you say the monetary system will collapse, energy exchanges between people is the new money source. I have abilities to help you, and when I help you, ultimately that energy comes back to me. It might not come back to me through you, but it ultimately comes back to me. There's so many things. The more I give, the more comes back to me. Ultimately, when I give love once, love comes back to me 3 times. That's how it seems to work for me, sometimes 10 times. The more love I give out, the more love comes back to me. I would say to anyone watching this, if anything I've said or Luke said has inspired you in any way today, get in contact with us and write a list of the ones that have. By writing the list, you're actually throwing out that web. And as soon as you write that list, read it before you go to bed, because this is when your subconscious will then take it and start showing you different ways. And it will lead you to some very Truman Show-like synchronicities, where you'll go to bed and you'll write down, I want to learn how to learn Spanish. And you'll get up in the morning and you'll turn your computer on and Google will show an advert for learning Spanish. And you'll be like, don't get paranoid thinking Google's listening to you. It's nothing to do with that, because this will happen. I wanted to learn Qigong, and I put it out into the ether. And the next day, a good friend of mine we worked together, she said to me, I've got this Qigong teacher. And I was like, what? Was you in my bedroom last night? That's not even possible. How the fuck did that happen? And she lives over 45 minutes away from me. So make sure you're feeding the right things. Make sure you know how your subconscious works, and don't start to go down that whole route of paranoia. Go to the route that you're a powerful being. You are a creative being, and you can create whatever you want to create. And this is what we're here to help show you, if you would so like. Make that first step. The first step leads on to the 1,000th step. When I was in my first step, what I'm doing now is impossible for me. Now I'm seeing things that I would not have even been on my scale when I was back there, that I now believe are quite easily possible. And I'm only a few steps away from them, because the more steps I take towards them, the more something else gets shown to me. And its ascension is ultimately never ending. Enlightenment is never ending, because you can shine as bright as the sun, or you can walk up as many steps as you want to walk up. It just depends where you're comfortable with going and how much you want to put into it. And if we can all help each other to do this, then that's the beauty of this collective conscious creation. And let's all do this together, and let's all do it with love, unconditional love, and respect for each other.
Absolutely. That is wonderful. Everyone who is tuning in, please comment below. I'd love to know what you thought of this episode. Send Elliott loads and loads of love. Do check him out. He's a truly wonderful being. And I'd just love to thank you all for checking us out. Please do stay tuned for more episodes where we bring you more leading edge creators. And thank you so much for being on the leading edge of consciousness and for shining as brightly as you do. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leading Edge Conversations podcast. Make sure to check out our other episodes where we have incredible interviews with people truly living on the leading edge of consciousness.